Have you ever wondered what really happens when we die? I mean, what if it isn't just a final full stop? What if it's more like a doorway? Today, we're diving into some incredible personal stories that really challenge everything we think we know about the end of life. Okay, let's get into it. This really is the big question, isn't it? It's something people have asked forever. But we're not going to be digging through ancient myths today.
Nope, we're going to be looking at modern, personal stories. We're talking about people, surgeons, college professors, even little kids who say they've had an experience so real, so powerful, that it completely changed their lives. They believe they've found out.
So where do we even begin with a question this huge? Well, we're going to approach this like an investigation, looking for clues. And these clues, they aren't coming from old books. They're coming from people alive today. This brings us to our first and maybe most famous set of clues, what people see when they get a glimpse beyond their own body. These are near-death experiences, or NDEs. You know, stories from people who were medically, clinically dead, and then came back with the most baffling accounts you can imagine.
Let me tell you about the case of Pam Reynolds. It's just mind-blowing. In 1991, she needed this incredibly risky brain surgery. To do it, doctors had to cool her body down to 60 degrees, stop her heart, and drain the blood from her head. Her brain activity went completely flat. Medically, she was gone. But that's when her experience began. She said she floated out of her body and watched the surgery. She described the special bone saw they used. It looked like an electric toothbrush, she said. She heard a female surgeon say that her arteries were too small. The thing is, her eyes were taped shut and she had special earbuds in, blocking all sound.
And beyond all those stunningly accurate details, what she felt was even more profound. She didn't feel scared or confused. She said it was like coming home, a feeling of pure belonging. So when she woke up and started describing things only the people in that operating room could have known, her doctors were absolutely speechless.
And this is the million-dollar question, right? How? Skeptics might say, well, it's just a trick of the brain, or maybe she pieced together memories later. But the medical records are crystal clear. During the time she was making these observations, her brain showed zero electrical activity. It was completely offline. So, how do you explain it?
And here's the thing. Pam's story, as incredible as it is, isn't a one-off, not even close. When you look at thousands of these accounts, from people like Jeff Sears, an oil rig worker, or Anita Moorjani, who we'll talk more about in a second, you see these same themes over and over. A feeling of overwhelming peace, traveling through a tunnel toward a brilliant light, meeting relatives who have passed on, and this incredible sense of unconditional love. The pattern itself is a huge piece of the puzzle.
But, and this is a really big but, it's not always a journey into the light. Some of these glimpses are of something much, much darker.
Take the case of Howard Storm. He was a tenured art professor, a die-hard atheist, the last person you'd expect to have any kind of spiritual experience. When he had an NDE, he found himself in a terrifying, cold, dark place, being tormented by cruel figures. He said it was like being eaten alive by hate. In total desperation, he cried out for help and was rescued by a being of pure light. The experience completely shattered his worldview and turned him into a man of deep faith.
And the transformations aren't just mental or spiritual. Sometimes they're shockingly physical. Let's circle back to Anita Moorjani. As she lay in a coma, her body was just ravaged by terminal cancer. Her organs were shutting down. She weighed only 85 pounds. In her NDE, she was given a choice: stay or go back. She was told that if she chose to go back, her body would heal itself. She chose to come back. And when she woke up, it did. Within weeks, her tumors had shrunk by about 70%. Soon after, her doctors declared her completely cancer-free. They had absolutely no medical explanation for it.
Okay, so if near-death experiences stretch the limits of what we think is possible, our second clue basically throws the rulebook right out the window. We're talking about the baffling and deeply specific memories of very young children. It all started with nightmares. A little boy, just 2 years old, named James Linninger, began waking up night after night, screaming. He'd be kicking and yelling about a plane crash, about being trapped in a cockpit on fire.
At first, his parents thought it was just bad dreams. But then, he started sharing details, insanely specific details. He said he flew a plane called a Corsair. He said he took off from a ship called the Natoma Bay. He even remembered the name of a friend who was there with him, Jack Larson. And through it all, he was absolutely insistent about his own name. He wasn't James Leninger. He said, "I was James Houston."
So his parents, totally confused and a little freaked out, started digging. And what they found was just staggering. The Natoma Bay was a real U.S. Navy aircraft carrier from World War II. It had a squadron of Corsair pilots. And in that squadron was a pilot named James M. Huston, Jr., who was killed in action during the battle for Iwo Jima. And guess what? His wingman, who saw his plane go down, was named Jack Larson. Every single detail a toddler was spouting checked out. How is that even possible?
And look, this kind of thing isn't just a recent fluke. If you go back to the 1930s in India, you find the famous case of a 4-year-old girl named Shanti Devi. She started talking about her other family in a town over 100 miles away. She gave names, street directions, and details about her past life as a woman who died in childbirth. Her story was so compelling that the government got involved. Even Mahatma Gandhi took an interest, and they launched an official investigation which confirmed her claims. So, wow, where does this all leave us? We've been following this trail of what you could almost call footprints from whatever lies beyond. Let's try and put all these pieces together and see what we've got. You've got Pam Reynolds, who saw things with no brain activity. There's Howard Storm, the atheist whose life was completely upended by a vision of a hellish realm. You have James Leininger, a toddler who somehow knew verified details of a WW2 pilot's life. And then there's this whole other category we've touched on, the shared death experience, like the story of Annie Capp, who reported feeling her mother's consciousness literally passed through her at the exact moment she died. Each one of these presents a fundamental mystery that our current science just can't quite wrap its head around.
So when you boil it all down, you're really left with two major ways of looking at all this. Through the skeptical lens, this is all just complex brain chemistry, a fascinating, powerful illusion cooked up by a dying mind to cope with the anxiety of its own end. But when you look at the evidence from the people who've lived it, you see verified historical details, you see medically inexplicable healings, and you see lives that are changed so deeply it's hard to just write it all off as a dream.
And, in the end, maybe these stories aren't meant to be proof in the way a scientist proves a theory. Maybe there's something else. Maybe they're invitations. An invitation to be a little more curious, to question what we think is certain, and to just wonder about the enormous mystery of what it means to be conscious.
So I'll leave you with this question. Are these incredible, consistent, and often verified stories actual glimpses of what's waiting for us? Or are they the mind's last, most beautiful piece of poetry written just before the curtain falls for good? The mystery, for now, remains.